Freedom Beyond Self, Buddha's teaching on letting go. Before we begin, take a moment to arrive. You may notice a quiet effort already present, the sense of being someone who must hold things together, understand, improve, or arrive somewhere else. This story begins right there, in that subtle tension most of us live with without questioning. The Buddha did not meet this tension with judgment or force, but with careful seeing. And in that seeing, something unexpected becomes possible, a freedom that comes not from becoming more, but from holding less. The weight you carry. You may not notice it at first. It feels like responsibility, like personality, like the simple fact of being someone in the world. You wake up already shaped by expectations, how you should respond, what you must protect, what must not be lost. Even in quiet moments, there is a subtle holding, a sense of needing to remain intact. This is not dramatic suffering. It is quieter than that. It is the low hum of effort required to keep a sense of self standing. The Buddha recognized this weight not as a failure, but as a habit of mind. A natural movement, gathering experience into a center called me. Over time, that center becomes defended. Stories form around it. Roles harden, and what began as a useful reference point slowly becomes a burden, carried everywhere, even into rest. Identity is shelter. Identity often begins as shelter. You learn who you are in order to belong, to function, to survive. Student, parent, worker, seeker. Each role offers stability and orientation, but what shelters can also confine. When identity is leaned on for safety, it must be constantly maintained. Any threat, criticism, change, aging, loss creates inner friction. Psychologically, this shows up as tension, a tightening in conversation, a subtle comparison with others, the feeling of being slightly behind or needing to prove something. The Buddha did not ask that these patterns be judged or eliminated. He invited something simpler, to see how they operate, moment by moment, and to notice the strain that comes from holding them too tightly. A process, not a person. The Buddha pointed to experience and said, in essence, what you call self is a flow, not a thing. When you look closely, the sense of me does not appear as a solid entity. It shows up as sensations, thoughts, emotions, memories, intentions, arising and fading like weather. One moment you feel confident, the next uncertain, one moment generous, the next withdrawn. Which one is truly you? The Buddha's insight was not philosophical abstraction. It was intimate observation. When the mind stops insisting on a fixed center, experience becomes lighter. You are no longer required to be consistent, impressive, or complete. Life is allowed to move, and you move with it, rather than standing apart trying to manage it. The subtle strain of becoming. Even spiritual life can become a project of becoming calmer, becoming wiser, becoming someone who has let go. This effort may look refined, but it carries the same tension as any other identity. There is still someone who must arrive somewhere else. The Buddha noticed this too. He saw how striving, even toward freedom, can quietly reinforce the very self it seeks to dissolve. The mind leans forward, measuring progress, comparing today with yesterday. And in that leaning, there is contraction, not failure, just misalignment. Freedom is not found ahead. It is revealed when the leaning softens. Watching the sense of I. You can observe this directly. In a disagreement, notice how quickly the word I forms, sometimes silently, sometimes aloud. I am right. I am hurt. I am not seen. Along with it comes a tightening in the chest or jaw. Energy gathers to defend a position. The Buddha's way is not to suppress this reaction, but to stay present with it. To see how the sense of self intensifies around certain thoughts and dissolves around others. In simple awareness, without judgment, the grip loosens. The story no longer needs to be carried so heavily. Something opens. Nothing solid to defend. The Buddha taught that suffering lessens when there is nothing solid to protect. When identity is seen as process rather than possession, defense relaxes. Criticism lands more softly. Praise passes through without sticking. You respond rather than react. Not because you have perfected yourself, but because there is less that needs guarding. This does not erase personality or responsibility. It simply removes the extra tension of ownership. Actions still occur, words are still spoken, but they arise from responsiveness instead of self-maintenance. Life feels less like a performance and more like participation. Creativity without ownership. Think of moments when creativity flowed easily, writing, building, solving a problem, listening deeply. In those moments, there was likely little concern about who you were. Attention was absorbed, time softened, effort felt natural. The Buddha would recognize this as alignment. When self-reference fades, energy moves freely. There is intelligence without control, action without strain. This is not special or mystical. It is available whenever the need to be someone relaxes and experience is allowed to unfold on its own terms. The relief of non-arrival. So much exhaustion comes from the idea that you must arrive as someone finished, complete, settled. But the Buddha pointed to a different freedom, non-arrival. Life as continuous movement, not a destination to be secured. When you stop measuring yourself against an imagined endpoint, there is relief. Waiting becomes part of the path, not an obstacle. Uncertainty becomes livable. The mind no longer strains toward a future identity. Presence deepens, not as achievement, but as availability. The self as habit. The Buddha described the sense of self as a pattern that repeats when conditions support it. Like any habit, it strengthens with repetition and weakens with awareness. When conditions change, silence, stillness, deep attention, the habit fades. Not permanently, but enough to be recognized as optional. This recognition is powerful. You realize you are not required to take every self-referential thought personally. Thoughts arise, feelings arise, identity arises, and just as naturally, they pass. What remains is not emptiness, but ease. Even the spiritual self. One of the Buddha's most subtle insights was seeing how the spiritual self can become the final attachment. The one who knows, the one who practices, the one who has seen truth. This identity can be refined, respected, and quietly constricting. The Buddha's response was simplicity. He returned again and again to direct experience. Breath, sensation, mind, not to accumulate insight, but to release clinging. Even wisdom, when held too tightly, becomes another burden. Freedom requires a lighter touch. The middle way of letting be. Letting go of identity does not mean disappearing or becoming passive. It means allowing life to express itself without constant self-reference. The middle way is not between self and no self, but between clinging and denial. You still care, you still act, but you are less invested in how these actions define you. Effort becomes alignment rather than force. Compassion arises naturally because there is less separation to maintain. Others are no longer mirrors for your identity, but fellow movements in the same flow. The raft and the river. The Buddha compared his teaching to a raft, useful for crossing, but not meant to be carried once the shore is reached. Even the Dharma is not an identity. It is a tool for seeing clearly. When it has served its purpose, it too must be released. Holding on, even to truth, recreates the self around it. This is why the Buddha emphasized silence as much as speech. Some understandings cannot be possessed. They can only be lived. When grasping stops, understanding deepens on its own. Ordinary freedom. What remains when identity loosens is not extraordinary. It is ordinary life, unburdened, washing dishes without a story, listening without preparing a response, resting without needing to justify it. The Buddha's liberation was not an escape from the world, but intimacy with it. When nothing needs to be defended or displayed, life meets itself directly. Joy becomes quieter, sorrow becomes workable, experience feels trustworthy again. Nothing to prove. There is profound relief in realizing that nothing needs to be proven. Not your worth. Not your understanding. Not your progress. The self that once demanded confirmation is seen as a passing formation, not a commander. In this seeing, effort relaxes. Timing is trusted. You act when action is needed, and rest when rest is natural. The intelligence guiding you is not personal, yet deeply intimate. It is the same intelligence the Buddha pointed to again and again, available here, now. When holding ends, the Buddha's final gesture was one of release, nothing to grasp, nothing to become. When holding ends, freedom is not something new that appears. It is what was always present beneath the effort of being someone. Ease, presence. A quiet completeness that does not announce itself. Life continues, but it is no longer carried. And in that lightness, the deepest teaching becomes clear, not as belief, but as lived truth. This is Buddha Reflections, where philosophy, insight, and lived experience meet to explore mind, impermanence, and release. Thanks for your time. It's been a delight. What should we explore next? Comment, share, and save your insight. Subscribe to Orbital Dharma and keep your thoughts bright.